The history of the M14 and M16 during the Vietnam War. This holds a special place in my heart, and I'll tell you why later. Let's go.
In 1965, it was clear to President Lyndon Johnson that an escalation of U.S. military forces would be necessary to combat communist forces at work in North Vietnam. The ground war officially began for U.S. forces when 3,500 Marines were dispatched on March 8th. By December, that number had been raised to over 200,000. On a defensive mission to aid the South Vietnamese Army and its allies, United States forces would need the right weapons to combat an entirely new type of enemy.
So you got to figure we're in the middle of a war, right? And we're going to decide somehow let's switch weapon systems. And that's happening somewhat today. Check in the description. I got a video about the Army trying to go from the 5.56 to the 6.8. Why? We'll find out in this video, but why do we go from an M14 platform, which we know works, and one Garand, which we know works, to an M16 in the midst of a conflict, a war? That seems like a dumbass decision.
On an entirely new type of battlefield. Based on a long line of experimental weapons derived from the M1, including a few designs submitted by John Garand himself. The United States military tested dozens of designs from 1945 until 1951, finally shipping the rifle that would be designated the M14 in July of 1959. However, production delays meant that the only unit to be fully equipped with the new weapon would be the 101st Airborne Division by the end of 1961. Our forces wouldn't be fully equipped with the new rifle until July of 1965.
For those of you that have shot or carried an M14, found to be pretty reliable weapons, long, heavy. But again, its reliability is what matters. It does churn through ammo. Compared to an M16, even the A2 I was exposed to, pretty finicky, had to be cleaned a lot. Very susceptible to stuff, debris getting in there and causing jams, stovepipes, etc.
By the time the U.S. forces were fully equipped with the rifle, its use in the Vietnam War had quickly exposed its strengths as well as its weaknesses. The 7.62 millimeter NATO cartridges penetrated brush and cover very well, and the weapon had a firing range of over 2,000 feet of muzzle energy. On the other hand, early models of the rifle had wooden stocks which swelled and expanded in the humid jungle climate, affecting the accuracy of the rifle. In fully automatic mode, the recoil was so intense that the firearm was nearly uncontrollable in combat.
I would say anything in fully auto that's a shoulder-fired weapon is almost uncontrollable unless you're used to it. So let's take an AK-47, for example. And wherever you start shooting at, you're going to be up in the air pretty quick. So unless you walk the firearm up, the rifle up, start low or start their feet, you may hit their head. That's why they went away from fully auto. They went to 3-round bursts at one point because guys are just emptying magazines and doing nothing,
making it impossible to aim. Finally, the thick brush of the jungle, combined with the M14's length and weight, made the rifle a cumbersome burden upon the infantrymen. Largely due to these issues, the M14 would be the last of the battle rifles to be issued in quantity to U.S. forces. Today, the M14 is most...
Now, it is a longer weapon, definitely. Heavier, right, because you're carrying more ammo, and just bare bones, I think it's a pound or so heavier. But the reliability factor is what I'd be concerned with. And I haven't seen this video. A viewer sent it to me. We'll see where it goes. I've got experience as in Vietnam vets that have talked to me about this, and I've pried it out of their brains about their experience and their thoughts on it. You can imagine that conversation. Let's keep going.
Mostly used as a ceremonial arm by honor guards, color guards, and drill teams. Though in the 90s, the rifle was modified into the designated marksman rifle and issued to special security teams and snipers. The 1st Battalion of the U.S. Infantry Regiment is the sole remaining Army combat unit where the M14 is still standard issue. In 1966, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara authorized the replacement of the M14 with the M16 as the standard issue service rifle. It was not met with universal approval. Many soldiers held fast to their M14s, deriding the M16 as a frail and underpowered Mattel toy. The gun was in fact very lightweight, weighing only 6 pounds when loaded with 20 rounds.
Well, that's not accurate. I think it was 7 pounds and change, not loaded. So I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. When you get into, let's just call it 2 pounds difference, base weight loaded, you guys tell me in the comments what it is. If you got a weapon you know is going to go bang, would you want to have it? Because look what we're doing now. We're talking about going away from 5.56, even though 85% of the troops in a Pentagon study said they're happy with it, to a 6.8, which effectively is a neck down 7.62. Why? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Take a look at that video. But why we did it in the middle of a war is a good question. Because we were using the M1 Garand in the jungles and the similar terrain during World War II, and it was effective. I never heard anybody complain about it. Why'd we go from something that's effective to a brand new weapon? You know, it's a money grab, I suspect, but I want to hear you guys' comments, your opinions. And don't just say it's a better weapon because without having some backing behind it.
The small caliber 5.56 NATO cartridge contributed to the initial concerns about the gun's lack of firepower. But testing by the United States Continental Army Command under General Willard G. Wyman concluded that an 8-man team, each armed with the M16, carried the same amount of firepower as an 11-man team carrying the M14. In October of 1961, Armalite, initial manufacturer of the rifle, then known as the AR-15, sent 10 of the new weapons to Allied forces in Vietnam for testing on the actual battlefields. After an enthusiastic response, 1,000 more were sent to the Allies in the next year.
Now, why in God's green earth would you do testing on a battlefield? Why ever would you do testing? Give it to people in training. Give it to people that are in infantry training to test it. Give it to people that aren't in a fight to test a weapon. And unfortunately, having worked with the government in and out of the military, it's hard for me to believe the stats. They give 10 rifles to somebody and say, oh, yeah, it works favorably. What that means, I don't know. McNamara wanted the weapon, so the weapon was going to happen. That's my opinion from studying this.
While the United States Special Ops units praised the weapon, and the United States Air Force officially adopted the rifle, now designated the M16, in 1962, the first shipments of the weapon arrived in U.S. soldiers' hands without proper instructions or cleaning supplies. Early models also lacked the chrome-lined barrel and chamber present in the M14, which did lend a ruggedness to that previous rifle not present in the M16. Dirt and corrosion from the gunpowder and oil caused a jamming flaw in the M16 known as failure to extract, where a spent cartridge case remained lodged in the chamber after firing, preventing further fire.
Now, for any of you guys out there that have fired one of these in training and you haven't cleaned it every day, even in training when you're cleaning every day, you know these things will have failure to eject, failure to feed, stovepipes. Not all the time, no. I think they've gotten better, but the tolerances were so tight. And if you weren't cleaning it, that was the comment historically that, hey, the GIs weren't cleaning their weapons. Well, if you're on a 10-day patrol in a swamp or in a jungle you could clean it all day. The humidity is going to cause rust. And as we know, those things will rust pretty quick. And if the bolt gets a little bit rusty, tolerances being as tight as they are, you're going to have jams like this. You're going to have failure to feed, failure to eject problems.
While the lighter weight and smaller ammunition meant a soldier was capable of carrying more ammo and thus more firepower, the durability and functionality issues of the M16 were to prove deadly on more than one occasion, as one Marine Corps rifleman notes.
We left with 72 men in our platoon and came back with 19. Believe it or not, do you know what killed most of us? Our own rifle. Practically every one of our dead was found with his M16 torn down next to him where he'd been trying to fix it.
Let's think about that for 1 second. If something happened like that in a typical situation, a manager makes a decision where a bunch of people die because of a dumb decision, because we had 10 of them tested, right? And then they shipped another 1,000. That was their testing. And yeah, they may have done some in Armor Light, whatever. But if that happened in any other context, the person would be summarily put into jail, right? They'd be prosecuted for something. Now, McNamara, nothing happened, albeit the Marines were dying. And I've got experience with this. I had an uncle that was injured during Tet in Vietnam. I've got many friends that are Vietnam vets. And this was a real issue. This is not a pretend issue. That's why the new 6.8 kind of rings a bell with me. We've got 85% of the troops now happy with the weapon after figuring it out, different magazines, heavier bullets. And we get this, and no repercussions to anybody in the decision-making authority, decision-making tree that decided, hey, let's go a new weapon system in the middle of a war.
Although the early problems with the M16 gave the weapon an unreliable reputation, one that persists to this day, manufacturers soon rolled out the M16A1, a model which corrected the earlier version's deadly flaws. The chamber and the bore were now chrome-lined. Intensive training was supplied to our troops, and proper cleaning supplies were issued to the soldiers with the weapons. The first major conflict of the Vietnam War was the Battle of Yad Chang, beginning with the battle at Landing Zone X-Ray.
Now, how Bush League is that? You send them a weapon with no cleaning supplies. You have a chrome-lined barrel in a weapon you've been using, the M14. You cut back and save $1.25 and don't put it in the M16. And they go, okay, we give you an M16A1. Here's some cleaning supplies, which what dumbass wouldn't send them to begin with? Oh, we'll chrome line the barrel because we realize that's what we did before that worked. And we'll throw in the extra dollar cost to the government so we don't have a bunch of guys that are dying.
In the week before Thanksgiving, in 1965, the U.S. Army came head-to-head with the North Vietnamese Army for the first time. It was a battle that would lead to 3 separate Medals of Honor. One of those was earned by First Lieutenant Walter Joseph Marm. Joe Marm was fresh out of the Officer Candidate School and the Ranger School when he was given new orders. A new Army division was being formed, the 1st Cavalry Division, and they needed officers. Lieutenant Marm was assigned to the 7th Cavalry Regiment, whose most famous commander had been General George Armstrong Custer. The new airborne units were testing the use of helicopters for cavalry, carrying loads of men quickly to where they were needed in battle. And the first battle the helicopters would carry them into was the Yad Chang.
Now let's put all this in context for those who don't know about it, right? Limited use of helicopters during the Korean War, very limited use. This is when the use really took off. So we still don't have a lot of experience with helicopters, a tested experience, right? We throw in a new weapon system. What the hell? Now we're on the 2nd version of the weapon system. And we're fighting in a terrain that we're familiar with because we fought in the Pacific, similar terrain at different points. But you put all these things together into one pot, it seems like you're going to have a shitty recipe at the end, right?
A battle that looked like it would turn into a defeat every bit as ignominious as Custer's. North Vietnamese Army, or NVA regiments, had attempted the destruction of a U.S. Special Forces camp, and the 1st Cavalry Division was pursuing them. On November 14th, 1965, this pursuit led the 7th Cavalry Regiment's 1st Battalion to the Yad Chang Valley on a search and destroy mission. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore entered the valley first, with members of his Bravo Company. 16 helicopters shuttled Bravo Company into Landing Zone X-ray on the northeast side of Chupong Mountain. They would secure the landing zone and await the battalion's Alpha, Charlie, and Delta companies. From the air, LZ X-ray looked flat and open. On the ground, it was a different matter. The landing zone was covered with elephant grass, up to 5 feet high, perfect for hiding enemy soldiers. Enormous anthills dotted the area, large enough to provide cover for weapons units. Colonel Moore knew the...
You know, second guessing it, sitting here in a chair, armchair quarterbacking it, you'd think, why not go in, run a bunch of fire missions on top of the place for 2 hours, clear it out, then come in, right? You wouldn't walk in, you're walking into elephant grass. You know it's there. I mean, you can see it's there. They should know what elephant grass is. I'm familiar with it. It can be up to 4 feet tall. Anybody can be in a prone position and whack you. Coming in with a helicopter, they can hear you. So you wonder sometimes about these missions when someone's sitting there devising it, right? I'm sitting there planning this mission. I'm going to send this first cav in. I know what the terrain's like. We've probably done some recon on it. Hey, let's run some A-10s or some bombers over top and clear it out for a few hours. Then let's go in with the first cav, right? And secure that position. It just seems like there's foibles that anybody to understand, even someone who plays video games, trying to conquer the game, would say, hey, I need to prep this right before I drop in.
The enemy had forces in this area. What he didn't know was that 3 regiments of the NVA were gathered nearby. Far more soldiers than the 1 company he'd managed to bring in so far. With the M16A1 and later variants of the rifle, the U.S. military had found its new standard-issue combat weapon. By 1968, the M16A1 had achieved widespread acceptance among our troops and officially replaced the M14 in 1970. Total worldwide production of the M16 family of firearms totals over 8 million, making it the most manufactured firearm of its caliber, and it has seen action in every conflict involving the United States since the Vietnam War.
The M16 weapon system, first developed by John Stoner nearly 50 years ago, is a long-serving weapon.
Now, is the M16 a good weapon? I don't have a problem with the M16. I think it was not fully cooked by the time they roll it out to the troops in 1966. Clearly, because they came out with the second version very quickly. It's like the first version, the M16, was a beta test, and they were the beta testers, those Marines who all died with a bunch of failure to extract rounds, right? Number one. Number two, is it widely accepted? I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know how many corporals, lance corporals, PFCs, Marines on the ground that they talked to and said, hey, young devil dog, is this weapon widely accepted? You were carrying an M14. Now you got an M16. What do you think? That's what matters, right? It doesn't matter what some jackass colonel says or general says, hey, the troops say this in the Pentagon. They just don't know. And this relates back again to the new 6.8 the Army's going to adopt. Is it going to be better or worse? Yeah, there's some things that are better about the 6.8, but if we got something that works, why are we going to change it and do another beta test?
Really kind of loathed when it was first developed, fielded by U.S. Army soldiers in Vietnam. There was a rumor going around that the weapon was self-cleaning, and there was a great deal of problems with the ammunition selected. Apparently there were problems with the powder fouling the action. The tolerances are so close in that weapon that it was subject to fouling and jamming because of the problems. But it's a weapon that has had most of the bugs worked out of it. It's
Right there. I don't want the bugs worked out of my airplane when it's flying, right? I don't want to beta test a new part in my airplane, because if it crashes, I'm dead. I don't want to work out the bugs of the M16. When he says that, I don't know this guy. I'm sure he means well. But you don't want to work out the bugs of a firearm when people are trying to shoot at you and you're trying to shoot back, right? That would make sense to everybody in the audience. So this kind of stuff really has got a special hatred in my heart when they work out the bugs, right? The military's the guinea pig for shit we're trying to sell or buy.
extremely durable. At the time it was developed, it was considered almost space-age technology. This was a weapon that was completely devoid of wood, as all U.S. military firearms had been up to that point. It was lightweight, very portable, and fired a new type of cartridge, the 223 caliber cartridge, or 5.56 millimeter. Was thought that a smaller cartridge size would enable U.S. Army soldiers to carry that much more ammunition on their person.
And you can carry more ammo, right? I'm a big proponent of sticking with the 5.56 now that we've got the bugs worked out, as he called it. Because it is lighter, you can carry more ammo. Let's go back to 1966. They're in heavy jungle typically. What's going to matter? Well, a 7.62 is going to knock through brush and things a lot more effectively. You're not shooting as far than a 5.56. And I don't know that having 10 more rounds, we'll call it another extra magazine, is going to matter if the thing doesn't go bang. I think the answer to that one's going to be, it doesn't matter. If you're the young GI sitting there, you don't give a shit about the weight if you're trying to deal with the jam as you're getting fired upon. So question for the viewers. So we got the M16, M14. As we know, the original M16 was a beta test. And they beta tested it again, realized, oh, we need cleaning kits, right? These guys need to clean their weapons. Do you think that still happens? Do you think it relates to all the 6.8 millimeter rifle they're pushing now? Is there a reason to do it, ultimately? And there's one time you want one man, one vote, right? Would be, let's talk to an E5 and below in the military anonymously and say, hey, do you think the current M4 is a good platform, or should we consider changing it? Not brass, not lobbyists, not ex-generals. I think that would be the way to go. I'll see you in the next video.